So I think what happens a lot of times is what your feelings versus what you can actually quantify happening. And not to sound like these are the dorks that just, if you can't quantify it, it doesn't exist.
Are
It's
you
not
about to talk body blows?
Well, look, I deleted my Twitter app just to try to replenish the soul a little bit from wasting time and getting into these arguments or whatever. But I heard some of it secondhand. So is this what happened on Twitter last year? Here's the other thing, too. We have millions and millions of listeners, most of whom, they don't live in our little football world. So what was big for us, or you, because you're still on Twitter all the time, what was big for you last week, which was this whole body blows discussion.
I dipped a toe.
Oh, you were in there.
I dipped a toe into the waters. I dropped one tweet and left.
Oh, that was nice. Good work. I didn't even do that. I really wanted to. So what was big for us isn't necessarily big for our for our massive podcast audience. However, just to explain it real quick, right? Did Jeff Schwartz start it?
Yeah.
Okay, so he started it by saying, hey, when I played, I felt like when we ran the ball, it was like body blows, and it was attacking the defense, and it wore down guys in the fourth quarter. And you'd get his buddy Duke, our friend Duke Manyweather, who, he pretty much hates us all the time, and it was like, oh, no, you guys don't know offensive line play. You don't know it as well as us, and, physicality matters. And you get O-line Twitter, they get together like those Transformers that turned into like the big guy, right? They all unite.
Okay.
They all unite, and it's like anti-PFF, physicality wins, and you got to establish the run and all these different things, right? So they start, and you even got, I think I saw Sean Smith, former Chiefs tight end. He's like, nah, dude, I hate deuce blocks. You hit me with that deuce block 5 or 6 times, and it really hurts me and all that stuff. So here's my point.
Can I read you the tweet just so people know what the hell it is?
Yes.
So Jeff Schwartz starts. This is May the 30th, apparently was when they started. Lots of chatter about establishing the run.
ETR.
Air quotes. Well, we're getting there. In the NFL, and how data shows it's an outdated way to think / call an offense. I agree. However, I've always thought as a player that ETR was about asserting physical dominance over the opponent. Body blows over a game. And then he has a second tweet that said, there's a fine line between running the ball just to run the ball, especially if it's not working. But those body blows on defenders slow them down against the pass. It grinds on them. So when you're winning in the fourth, you're running to grind out the clock. They're weak. So there you go. Body blows weaken the opponent. Right. Therefore lead to wins.
So then I think from what I saw from the discussion, of course, somebody like Eric would jump in and he would say, well, this isn't proven by numbers. And then somebody says, you stupid geek with a PhD, you've never strapped on pads. When actually he was a run blocking tight end in college, which I love. He played. He understands the game a little bit too. So does George. Our numbers geeks understand the game extremely well. So all of that said, I think there's just a big difference between what players feel and what actually points toward winning games. So the idea that it felt like we were doing this, or the fact that Sean Smith, again, former defensive lineman from the Chiefs, was like, man, I hated getting double teamed, right? Honestly, when I'm GM, I'm not going to care about the feelings of my defensive tackle when he gets double teamed, because I don't think his feelings translate to winning all that much. That's the point. He feels like this is harder to do, right? Just like I think offensive linemen feel like it's difficult to switch from left tackle to right tackle. Even though there are numbers that show guys do it all the time. There's a learning curve. It's difficult to do, but guys do it all the time. So you ultimately lean on the numbers that point you to winning games, right? And just because your defensive tackle doesn't want to take on double team blocks, it doesn't mean that it's bad for your football team to have people running on you. Here's the one other thing. There is this massive disconnect between what is the joy and feeling that you get from a well-blocked play where you imposed your will and picked up 5 or 6 yards versus throwing a stick route against off coverage in cover 3 that goes for 7.
Right.
One is like, we did it.
I feel great.
We established the run. We had 17 good blocks on this play. Everybody executed well, and we picked up 6. Versus the quarterback threw a gimme route for 6 or 7 that is considered finesse.
That one made more yards, but the other one, the offensive lineman comes out and goes, I feel great about that. We did awesome.
So all it is, to me, I don't think the players are wrong in any of this sense. They're explaining their feelings, and they felt good about it and all that stuff. It just comes down to there's another logical explanation, which is it's not as valuable as you feel that it is.
Yeah.
And there's one other thing with that whole, hey, it felt like we were doing well in the fourth quarter and wearing them down. Those guys always come back to this like, well, the teams who run better are probably just better at football anyway.
Yeah, well, the point is, at that point, you're winning the game. What got you in a position to be winning the game is the important thing, not the fact that once you're there, you're still able to continue beating the team you're already beating. The point I made was simply that I think there's a bunch of things. So this got into an argument essentially with, on one side, leave the Erics of the world out for a moment, the guy that crosses the spreadsheets and the gridiron. There was essentially, on the one side, there's the Jeff Schwartzes of the world who's saying, I feel it, therefore it happened, you can't tell me otherwise. And then there's these, what's that guy's name, Josh Hermsmeyer, Frisco Josh, on the other side, which is coming at it 100% from a spreadsheet and saying, I can't see it, therefore it doesn't. And I think there's something in the middle, which is there are things that you feel playing the game that definitely exists, but if it doesn't actually tangibly move the needle in terms of winning or losing, it shouldn't be affecting your strategy. And that's the ultimate point, right? For a lineman,
that's the ultimate point.
Absolutely. You may, for a one-on-one physical, moral encounter between you and a defensive lineman, you absolutely want to be grinding on that guy all game long in the run game, and then later on you can see him get a bit tired of that and be fed up if you're winning, right? But if you're not winning, he's now rushing the passer because you have to pass, you're down 10, and suddenly the whole dynamic looks different. It's entirely dependent.
I don't deny that some of that stuff exists. I'm with you.
Right, but the point is, what got you to a position of now we're late in the game and we're either up 10 or down 10 was not you winning your imposition, your battle of will with the defensive lineman. It was whatever the hell you did as an offense, right? So this body blows, battle of wills thing, the one-on-one battle is not what is getting to that. That's the issue, right? That's not moving the needle in terms of winning and losing. That is only at the end of the game. If you're winning, you get to feel great about it.
There's also, I think, another thing at play, which is Jeff Schwartz may have experienced 5 games in his career where he's actually completely right, where it's like we ran the ball so much, we imposed our will that it worked. Maybe there was 5 games, right? Maybe there's X number of games where it absolutely worked. I always point to that Seattle game earlier this year against the Detroit Lions because Seattle wanted to establish the run so hard this year that they had 42 runs and only 17 passes. And like Pete Carroll was probably there on Monday morning like, guys, that is the gold standard of Seattle Seahawks football.
Well, we hit the magic number, 53 or whatever it was.
Don't even get into that. But that's the gold standard of Seattle Seahawks football. We had 42 runs, and the great Russell Wilson only had to throw the ball 17 times. It was one game where that truly worked. So there probably are. And this is what this is all about. It's small sample sizes versus like this macro view of what's going to win over time. There are definitely games in the history of the NFL where teams ran it down the defense's throat or imposed their will or did all those touchy-feely things. But we're talking about over a 16-game schedule, over a career. The best way to win football games is not to do it that way.
So I think a few things have changed in the NFL over the last decades to have sort of changed the dynamic of all this thing, right? It used to be that old adage of when you put the ball in the air, 3 things can happen and 2 of them are bad, right? That was the reason that people didn't pass. Instead, you just run the ball where still bad things can happen, but we don't pay attention to those. We don't. Fumbles, let's not talk about that. That muddies the point a little bit. But anyway, in recent years, passing has become so much more efficient that it isn't the risk it used to be. You know, there was a big thing over the weekend about Joe Namath's statistics. You know, Joe Namath threw a staggering amount of interceptions because back in the day, it was extremely perilous to put the ball in the air. You could beat up receivers. You could do all kinds of stuff. It's a whole
different world.
Right. So turnovers were crazy. It's not the case anymore, right? Quarterbacks are 60% completion percent used to be like the gold standard. If you were over 60, you're amazing. 70 is now getting left in the dust. People are completing 70% of their passes regularly. Interceptions are way down. Aaron Rodgers and a bunch of other people have the lowest interception rates in the history of the game. So efficiency in terms of completions are higher than they've ever been, and turnovers are lower than they've ever been. So passing has just become so much more efficient in terms of risk reward, and it gains like double the yardage. So now you're in a situation, well, okay, we could run the ball, but gone are the days, I think, where there is almost any NFL defense that is so inept at stopping the run that you can just do it all day long with no downside. You're going to be able to move the ball all day. You're going to be able to pull up a bunch of points. They're never going to be able to stop you. Every single defense in the NFL is at least vaguely proficient at stopping the run.
That's a big point, too, because the more our guys dive into the numbers now at the college level, the run game does matter a lot more at the college level because there's about 130 teams. There's a bigger discrepancy between Alabama and, say, UAB or UL Monroe.
You're going to go up against a defensive end that looks like me, but suddenly you can create a 10-yard gap at the line of scrimmage every game.
Right, you can, and there are, Jeff and other guys that played in the NFL. When you're playing, Pee Wee football and high school football, there's a massive gap of talent, and there are probably many games throughout your career where you just ran it down people's throats.
Right.
But now the NFL, because everybody's like, well, how many games would Clemson or Alabama win against the Buffalo Bills?
Zero.
Whoever, right?
None.
There's
Ever.
a huge difference between the best college team and the worst NFL team. As much as college people are like, the Bama could beat anybody, all this stuff. So the difference between number 1 and 32 in the NFL is so tight. There are very few instances where the run defense is so bad that they truly can't even.
This is where you like to regale us of a baseball story once in a while.
Yeah, I mean, I've got some stored up, but I'm going to hold on.
I'm going to hit you with an Irish American Football League story.
Well, we've got 5 minutes before another meeting, and I still have a jet.
I can do it quickly. So I played on a team called the West Dublin Rhinos, right? And our cross-city rival, the Dublin Rebels, were typically the best team in the Irish League every single year, right? We played on a defense that was really good stopping the pass, led by a ball-hawking safety, second team All-IAFL, and a couple of other people.
A ball hawk, maybe you'd be first team.
Led by a ball-hawking safety. We were really good against the pass. However, we sucked against the run. So we would play the Dublin Rebels, and they had this giant behemoth running back who probably outweighed me by like 50 pounds. But I had to spend all game long coming down and defending the run against this guy to the point where I just gave up playing coverage, just basically steamrolled at the line of scrimmage and tried to hit him in the hole so that somebody else could tackle him. But we were sufficiently bad against the run that you could legitimately just run all game long against us and never put the ball in the air. Those teams don't exist in the NFL. There isn't that level of ineptitude on run defense anywhere. But there is at lower levels of football, like, say, the Irish American Football League.
Way to throw your teammates under the bus. That's what I heard.
Only against the run. Against the pass. Look, I was a secondary member. The guys in the back end, we were great against the pass. Guys up front didn't necessarily hold up against the run. That's all I'm saying.
My quick baseball analogy about how feelings don't match the actual output or whatever, it always comes down to sample size and all that stuff. So when you're pitching, you have guys in scoring position, you're supposed to toughen up, right?
This wasn't an invitation to break out.
No, it's just all analogies. You're supposed to toughen up with guys in scoring position. And sometimes it works. It's like, it's second and third, one out, and I struck this guy out, got the next guy to pop up. I'm a real tough pitcher, really stepped up at the right time. And if you do that well over a small period of time, you're like, all right, I'm doing great at such things, and my numbers are great. But the stat geek in me knew that you can't keep that up. Just like don't get into those bad situations. There was a big difference between your feeling and whether or not that was good or not, right? My feeling was I was doing a great job at this thing that is very difficult to sustain or doesn't actually point toward winning over time, right? So there's a lot of that, a difference from a player in what you feel and what actually points toward winning games. That, I think, is the biggest issue with the whole body blows thing.